One, two, three. Happy
Happy
birthday to
birthday,
you, Gracie.
Gracie.
All right. We are today starting Genesis chapter 26. I know Kim's trying to get ready to go. So, does someone else want to volunteer to read? I have a short section, 1 to 5, and then a longer section, which is 6 to 34. So,
Mine breaks at 12.
oh, it does. Not at 5?
Kathy, what's yours
Yeah,
break
what's
at?
Worsby do?
Worsby does 1 to 6, and then 7 to 11, and then 12 to 33.
We could stop at 11. That would take a little bit bigger section.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that? Does someone besides those of us who are already reading want to volunteer to read this morning?
I can if nobody else wants to.
I can too. You just might hear background noise.
That's
Amber.
okay. Go ahead, Gretchen.
Okay. Isaac and Abimelech. The covenant confirmed to Isaac. Now there was a famine in the land besides the former famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. And the Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and will bless you for to you and to your descendants. I will give all these lands, and I will fulfill the oath which I swore to Abraham your father. I will multiply your descendants as the stars in heaven, and will give to your descendants all these lands. And by your descendants, all the nation of the earth shall bless themselves. Because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." Isaac deceives Abimelech about Rebekah. 6. So Isaac dwelt in Gerar. When the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister." For he feared to say, "my wife," thinking, lest the men of the place should kill me for the sake of Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. When he had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out of a window and saw Isaac fondling Rebekah, his wife. So Abimelech called Isaac and said, "Behold, she is your wife. How could you say, 'She is my sister'?" Isaac said to him, "Because I thought, lest I die because of her." Abimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech warned all the people, saying, "Whoever touches this man or his wife shall be put to death."
Well, I think it's interesting because in 8 it says he had been there a long time. So this is not like they were lying for a long period. Did no one think it was weird that him and his sister were in the same tent?
Yeah. Mine has footnotes. I'd have to find them.
Also, probably from one of my other studies in verse 5, it's my voice, my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. I have a note there that says 5 my's, and the number 5 equals grace.
Equals what?
Grace.
Okay.
So I must have looked up what the number 5 meant.
It's interesting, in my Bible it has Isaac was afraid that the men in Gerar would kill him to get his beautiful wife Rebekah, so he lied, claiming that Rebekah was his sister. Where did he learn that trick? He may have known about the actions of his father Abraham. Parents help shape the world's future by the way they shape their children's values. The first step toward helping children live rightly is the parents to live rightly. Your actions are often copied by those closest to you. What kind of example are you setting for your children?
Well, that was interesting too, because with Abraham and Sarah, or Abram and Sarah, she was his sister. So, like, he was, even though she was his wife, he was telling the truth. Like, this is not even close to being true for him to say that Rebecca was his sister because she wasn't. Any other thoughts before Cindy starts with John MacArthur? Gretchen, you had said something about your note. Did you find it?
Well, it said 26:7. It references Genesis 12:13, and then 20 verse 2, 12 and 13. So
Which
it
is that going back to his dad, maybe?
probably,
Because there was the two times Abraham did it. But then I was thinking too, like, do you not care that somebody might grab your wife and basically rape her? Because they just took them and would lay with them. All right, Cindy, whenever you're ready.
26:1, a famine in the land. Once again, the land of promise forced the beneficiaries of the covenant to move so as to escape the effects of a famine. Abimelech, most probably a Philistine dynastic title, with this being a different king from the one who had met Abraham. Philistines. This tribe of people, who originally sailed the Mediterranean Sea, became fierce enemies of Israel when they settled along the southwest coast of Palestine. Friendly to Isaac, they were forerunners of hostile descendant enemies. Overview 2-11. Obedience and deceit were both present, obeying God to dwell in the land, yet lying about his wife to the people of the land, reflected familiar shades of Abraham's strategy for survival. Verses 3-5. God confirmed the Abrahamic covenant with Isaac, emphasizing the same three elements as before: land, seed, and blessing. He appended specific honorable mention of Abraham's obedient response to all of God's words. Although Abraham was commended for his deeds, the Abrahamic covenant was an unconditional covenant grounded in God's sovereign will. Verses 6-9. Unlike his ancestor, to whom God sovereignly revealed the relationship between Abraham and Sarah, this king providentially discovered Rebekah's relationship to Isaac by just happening to look out of a window and witnessing caresses indicative of marriage and intimacy. Verse 11, charged all his people, put to death. A pagan king imposing the death penalty on anyone troubling Isaac or Rebekah suggests God was at work to preserve his chosen seed. And that's it through 11.
Any thoughts before Kathy starts? Worsby?
I'm a little confused. I don't know if Worsby will straighten it out or not. Did he see somebody caressing his wife before or after he lied about it being his sister?
The king saw him caressing his wife
Oh, okay.
that was supposed to be his sister.
Okay. That's what I missed. I was thinking somebody else did that. Okay.
This is making me wonder, though, if the wives had their own tents. Because remember with Isaac, when he took Rebecca to his mother's tent, which should have been with his father, and now we have been there a long time, but no one picked up that they were in the same tent and were husband and wife. just is really odd to me.
He faced his father's temptations. True faith is always tested either by temptations within us or trials around us, because a faith that can't be tested can't be trusted. God tests us to bring out the best in us, but Satan tempts us to bring out the worst in us. In one form or another, each new generation must experience the same test as previous generations, if only to discover that the enemy doesn't change and the human nature doesn't improve. Abraham is mentioned 8 times in this chapter, and you find the word father 6 times. Isaac was very much his father's son. Then verses 1 through 6, the temptation to run. When Abraham arrived in Canaan, he found a famine in the land and faced his first serious test of faith. His solution was to abandon the place God had chosen for him, the place of obedience, and to run to Egypt, thus establishing a bad example for his descendants who were prone to imitate him. The safest place in the world is in the will of God, for the will of God will never lead us where his grace can't provide for us. Unbelief asked, how can I get out of this? While faith asked, what can I get out of this? When Isaac faced the problem of a famine, he decided to go to Gerar, the capital city of the Philistines, and to get help from Abimelech. Isaac and Rebekah were probably living at Beer-lahai-roi at that time, which means they traveled about 75 miles northeast to get to Gerar. Even after arriving in Gerar, Isaac and Rebekah may have been tempted to go south to Egypt, though God had warned them not to consider that possibility. God permitted Isaac to remain in Philistia and promised to bless him. God had promised Abraham that his descendants would be greatly multiplied and one day would possess all those lands. Thus, Isaac had a right to be there as long as God approved. God blessed Isaac for Abraham's sake, just as he blessed believers today for the sake of Jesus Christ. We can never successfully run away from trials because God sees to it that his children learn the lessons of faith regardless of where they go. We can never grow in faith by running from difficulty, because tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance character. Like David, we may wish we had wings like a dove so we could fly away and be at rest. But if we did, we'd also be doves when God wants us to mount up with wings as eagles. The temptation to lie, verses 7 to 11. Isaac could flee from famine, but when he put himself into a situation that offered no escape, he had to turn to deception to protect himself. Abraham committed the same sin twice, once in Egypt and once in Philistia. Remember, faith is living without scheming, and telling lies seems to be one of humanity's favorite ways to escape responsibility. Isaac was asked about the woman who was with him, and like his father, Abraham before him, he said she was his sister. But when Abimelech saw Isaac caressing Rebekah, he knew she was his wife. There's a footnote here where he said it was his sister. It says Isaac's was the greater sin because he knew what twice happened to his father, and Rebekah was not his sister. Abraham told a half-truth while Isaac blatantly lied. That's to what you were saying, Chrissy.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another footnote here. The word translated sporting with or caressing comes from the same Hebrew root word as the name Isaac, which means to laugh or to play. While we commend them for their love, Isaac and Rebekah were engaging in expressions of affection that were better kept in privacy of their chamber. All right. Why did Isaac lie? Because he was afraid his pagan host would kill him in order to obtain his beautiful wife. His lie was evidence of his unbelief, for if he had claimed the covenant promise when he prayed for children, why couldn't he claim the same covenant promise to protect himself and his wife. The English poet John Dryden wrote, "Truth is the foundation of all knowledge and the cement of all societies. When people don't keep their word, the foundations of society begin to shake and things start to fall apart. Happy homes, lasting friendships, thriving businesses, stable governments, and effective churches all depend on truth for their success." The American preacher Phillips Brooks said, "Truth is always strong, no matter how weak it looks, and falsehood is always weak, no matter how strong it looks. Truth is cement, falsehood is whitewash." When he found himself in difficulty, Isaac was tempted to run and to lie, and we face the same temptation today. Isaac succumbed to the temptation and was found out. It's a sad day when unconverted people like Abimelech publicly expose God's servants for telling lies. What an embarrassment to the cause of truth. Okay.
What's your next section?
It does like 12 to 14, 14 to 17, 18 to 22.
Okay, maybe we'll go through 22 in the next section. All right. 1 to 11. If this short account sounds familiar, it should. Isaac's father Abraham tried the same trick with Sarah twice, with similar results. The context is similar. Isaac, like Abraham, was facing famine. Because of the famine, he moved into the region ruled by Abimelech. Out of the fear for his life, he lied to Abimelech by calling his wife his sister, but Abimelech soon learned the truth. And just as before, a ruler both scolded a man in this family for his deception and warned his own people not to touch the woman involved. Once more, we see God's commitment to keep his covenant, since it would be necessary that the line of descent remain uncontaminated. I do think too, like, don't you think like Satan, like he's trying to contaminate the line to Jesus? It is ironic that in the midst of a scene of Isaac's fear and unfaithfulness, we find a repetition of God's covenant to him. Isaac, like Abraham, was promised lands, offspring as numerous as the stars, and a blessing that would be for all the nations of the earth. This promise, personal, national, and international, was unconditionally made to Abraham and passed on to Isaac despite his faithlessness. And that takes me to verse 12. So the next section we'll read. Any thoughts on that section before we move on? There's Kimmy.
I'm ready to go.
All right. If not, the next section we'll read is 12 through 23. Amber, are you in a good place to read or no?
Yeah, I can read.
Okay, go ahead.
Hold on a second. I
Sure.
get my Bible here. I'm trying to make my breakfast and listen at the same time.
Oh, I
Okay,
didn't.
where are we at again?
Okay, verse 12, 26, verse 12 to 22.
All right. Isaac planted crops in the land in the same year, reaped 100-fold because of the Lord blessed him. The man became rich, and his wealth continued to grow until he became very wealthy. He had so many flocks and herds and servants that the Philistines envied him. So all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the time of his father Abraham, the Philistines stopped up, filling them with earth. Then Abimelech said to Isaac, "Move away from us. You have become too powerful for us." So Isaac moved away from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar, where he settled. Isaac reopened the wells that had been dug in the time of his father Abraham, which the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham died. And he gave them the same names his father had given them. Isaac's servants dug in the valley and discovered a well of fresh water there. But the herders of Gerar quarreled with those of Isaac and said, "The water is ours." So he named the well Esek, because they disputed with him. Do I need to read 21?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And 22.
Okay, then they dug another well, but they quarreled over that one also. So they named it Sitnah. He moved on from there and dug another well, and no one quarreled over it. He named it Rehoboth, saying, "Now the Lord has given us room, and we will flourish in the land."
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm confused because he was originally in Gerar. So he moves back to Gerar. Is that what they're saying? Because he was in
Think so.
Gerar in verse 6. Then he moved into the Philistine territory. No, he moved into the Gerar, which was the Philistine territory in verse 6.
Mine says he stayed in Gerar in verse 6. Oh, maybe he just went to, mine says he moved to Gerar Valley.
Yeah, so because up in verse like 1, I guess, it says he went to Gerar to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. Then in verse 6, it says he settled in Gerar, but then it says when he tells him to leave,
Mine says, now the Philistines had stopped and filled the earth with all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham.
I'm thinking he went from more of an urban area to a rural area of Gerar.
still
Mhm.
in the
That's where
same valley, just a different spot.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that last well that they settled upon, my Bible calls it the well of room enough for us at last. And it was read differently.
Mine
Room
says
enough.
Rehoboth.
Yeah, which,
Different.
yeah, Rehoboth.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, my other
Mine's
thought too is like, why did the Philistines fill in the wells? Like, why wouldn't they have used the wells unless it was taking water away from them? I mean, it is desert area, so maybe that's what. Let's find out what John has to say.
In my Bible, there's a footnote under 17 and 18. The desolate Gerar area was located on the edge of a desert. Water was as precious as gold. If someone dug a well, he was staking a claim to the land. Some wells had locks to keep them thieves from stealing the water. To stop or plug up someone's well was an act of war. It was one of the most serious crimes in the land. Isaac had every right to fight back when the Philistines ruined his wells, yet he chose to keep the peace. In the end,
Mm.
the Philistines respected him for his patience. So if Abraham, wasn't it Abraham had dug the well originally?
Yeah.
So that meant he was staking a claim to that land. So I guess the Philistines didn't want him to have that land. So they figured they were just going to stop the well, plug it up.
Mine says the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." So he called the name of the well Esek, because they contended with him. Then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that also. So they called its name Sitnah. And he moved from there, and that's when he dug the well that they did not quarrel over in Rehoboth.
I guess it gives a little context. So if if they dug a well, it was a claim to the land, and if someone stopped up the well, it was a declaration of war.
Right. That's what mine says, kind of.
All right, Cindy, are you ready?
Okay, verses 12 to 14. Isaac was content to stay in that place and farm some land. His efforts were blessed by God, but envied by the Philistines. Verse 15, stopped up all the wells. Water was so precious in that desert land that wells were essential. Plugging someone's well was ruinous to them and constituted serious aggression, often leading to war. Isaac could have retaliated, but he did not. Rather, he dug new wells. Verse 22, Rehoboth. The word means room enough. Finally, a well was dug without a quarrel erupting. Now that they were no longer perceived as encroaching upon another's territory, Isaac selected an appropriate place name which reflected how he saw God providentially working out their situation. And that's it.
I wonder why he didn't feel the need to retaliate over those wells. I would have thought, like, because water's so precious in the desert, like that would have been a big deal.
I have in this one commentary, water is a very precious commodity in desert country, and possessing a well is almost the same as having a deed to the land. Instead of defending what his men had done, Isaac moved to new locations. He may have been practicing Romans 12:18. Look that up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's Romans 12:18 say? Have peace with everybody.
Oh, I turned right to it. If possible, so far as it depends upon you, live peaceably with all. So just love God and love people.
Yeah. That would be hard not to react, I would think, but
Well, that's what Kathy's commentary said. The Philistines ruined his wells, yet he chose to keep the peace.
Keep moving on. Go
And
find
in the end, the Philistines respected him for his patience.
go find the gold in another place.
Take note, ladies.
yeah. All right. Cindy, did you get all the way through?
Yes.
Okay, Kathy?
The blessing, verses 12 to 14. Isaac and his neighbors had access to the same soil, and they depended on the same sunshine and rain. But Isaac's harvests were greater than theirs, and his flocks and herds multiplied more abundantly. The secret? God kept his promise and blessed Isaac in all that he did. God could give a similar blessing to Jacob. God would give a similar blessing to Jacob years later. But Isaac was a deceiver. How could the Lord bless somebody who claimed to be a believer and yet deliberately lied to the unbelieving neighbors? Because God is always faithful to his covenant and keeps his promises, and the only condition God attached to his promise of blessing was that Isaac remain in the land and not go to Egypt. God also blessed Isaac because of Abraham's life and faith, just as he blesses us for the sake of Jesus Christ. We'll never know until we get to heaven how many of our blessings have been dividends from the spiritual investments made by godly friends and family who have gone before. The conflict, verses 14 to 17. In spite of his material blessings, Isaac still suffered because of his lie, because the blessings he received brought burdens and battles to his life. Seeing his great wealth, the Philistines envied him and decided he was a threat to their safety. A similar situation would occur when the Jews multiplied in Egypt, and there's a reference to Exodus 1:8. The blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. Had Isaac not lied about his wife, God would not have disciplined him, but would have given him peace with his neighbors. Because of his sin, however, Isaac's material blessings caused him trouble. The Philistines tried to get Isaac to leave their land and settle elsewhere, and to encourage this, they stopped up Abraham's wells and deprived Isaac's flocks and herds of water they desperately needed. Water was a precious commodity in the Near East, and adequate wells were necessary if you were to succeed in the land. The crisis came when the king commanded Isaac to move away, and Isaac obeyed. Verses 18 to 22, the search. No matter where Isaac journeyed, the enemy followed him and confiscated his father's wells, and also the new wells that Isaac's servants dug. To find a well of springing water was a special blessing, for it guaranteed fresh water at all times, but the Philistines took that well too. The names of the new wells that Isaac's men dug reveal the problems he had with his neighbors. For Esek means contention. and Sitnah means hatred, but Rehoboth means enlargement. Because Isaac finally found a place where he was left alone and had room enough for his camp and his flocks and herds. Wherever Abraham had a problem with people, he boldly confronted them and got the matter settled, whether it was his nephew Lot, the invading kings, Hagar and Ishmael, or the Philistines. But Isaac was a retiring man who wanted to avoid confrontation. Since he was a pilgrim, he could move his camp and be a peacemaker. In every difficult situation of life, it requires discernment to know whether God wants us to be confronters like Abraham or peacemakers like Isaac, for God can bless and use both approaches. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men, Romans 12:18. Sometimes it isn't possible, but at least we should try, and we must depend on the wisdom from above that is pure and peaceable. Looking at Isaac's experience from a spiritual point of view, we can learn an important lesson. In the Bible, wells sometimes symbolize blessings from the hand of the Lord, and there are many references to Genesis, Numbers, Proverbs, Isaiah, and John. The church keeps looking for something new when all we need is to dig in again. Let me start that one over. The church keeps looking for something new when all we need is to dig again and old wells of spiritual life that God's people have depended on from the beginning. The Word of God, prayer, worship, faith, the power of the Spirit, sacrifice, and service. Wells that we've allowed the enemy to fill up. Whenever there's been a revival of spiritual power in the history of the church, it's been because somebody has dug again the old wells so that God's life-giving Spirit can be free to work. That's it.
Yeah, it just hit me that Isaac lived somewhere else, and so when he moved back there, he moved where Abraham had lived. Makes more sense now. Wonder why
Kathy, can you? Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead.
Can you go over that list of, you know, what
Okay.
it was to dig up the well?
Okay. Let's see. Old wells of spiritual life that God's people have depended on from the beginning. That's the list you want?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. The Word of God,
Uh-huh.
prayer,
Okay.
worship, faith, the power of the Spirit, sacrifice, and service.
Thank you.
Those are wells that we've allowed the enemy to fill up.
Can you tell me what Rehoboth means?
Yeah. I'm gonna find out again.
And something about shared.
In here it says it means enlargement. I think I don't know if it's Gretchen read somewhere where it says room enough.
Yeah, room enough. That's it.
But in here it says enlargement.
Yeah, my Bible said the well of room enough for us at last.
My little footnote says broad places or room.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay, 12 through 22. It's very short. God's hand was on Isaac, so when he sowed seed in that land, he reaped 100 times what was sown. His flocks also multiplied greatly, and unfortunately, the Philistines of the area grew envious of Isaac's success, so they attempted to sabotage Isaac by stopping up all the wells. In an, I'm going to hopefully say this right, in an agrarian society, wells indicated dominion. Oh, I guess like agriculture. Owning one meant that you essentially governed the surrounding area. Rather than quarrel over specific wells, however, Isaac avoided conflict by constantly moving and digging new wells. Eventually, God provided an uncontested well, and by an extension, a space for Isaac to be fruitful in the land. Anything more in that section before we move on? Tony is actually pretty short for the rest of this chapter. What's Worsby look like? John.
Worsby isn't real long. He's like maybe a column on the page.
Yeah. John's probably pretty short. Why don't we go ahead and read 23 to the end? Does somebody else want to volunteer to read? Gretchen,
I can read.
Oh, go ahead. I didn't know you were still there.
Okay. 23. You know what? Somebody just pulled in my driveway.
I'll go ahead.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. From there he went, I'm in verse 23. From there he went up to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, I am the God of Abraham your father. Fear not, for I am with you and will bless you and multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake. So he built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants dug a well. When Abimelech went to him from Gerar with Ahuzzath, his advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his army, Isaac said to them, Why have you come to me, seeing that you hate me and have sent me away from you? And they said, We see plainly that the Lord has been with you. So we said, Let there be a sworn pact between us, between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you and have done to you nothing but good, and has sent you away in peace. You are now the blessed of the Lord. So he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. In the morning they rose early and exchanged oaths. And Isaac sent them on their way, and they departed from him in peace. That same day Isaac's servants came and told him that about the well that they had dug, and said to him, We have found water. He called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. When Esau was 40 years old, he took Judith, the daughter of Berai the Hittite, to be his wife. He married a Hittite. And Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. Why would he have done that? That was a dumb move.
Because Esau was godless.
Oh, it's Esau. I'm on Jacob. Okay. Or Isaac.
No, Esau did that.
Okay, thank you. That
Okay.
makes more sense.
Mine says Esau's marriage is Isaac's sorrow.
Okay. I was thinking it was Isaac. I'm like, what? It's what his brother did. Okay. Confused myself. Sorry. All right. Cindy.
24 and 25. This abbreviated reaffirmation of the Abrahamic covenant was designed to ease Isaac's anxiety at facing envy, quarrels, and hostility, and to assure Isaac that he had reasoned right. Fruitfulness and posterity would prevail. That it was a significant reminder to Isaac is seen in a response reminiscent of his father. He built an altar of worship to mark the spot of God's appearance to him. Verse 26, Abimelech and Phicol. Because 90 years had passed since Abraham was visited by men with the same name, they must have been titles rather than proper names. Verse 28, an oath, a covenant. In a mirror image of a former occasion, Abimelech, in the company of a friend and the highest ranking officer in his army, sought after a treaty with one they estimated to be superior and stronger than themselves and a possible threat. Isaac, on the other hand, perceived them as hostile. The outcome was most desirable for both, peace between them. Verse 30, ratification of a covenant often involved a banquet. Verse 33, Beersheba, literally, the well of the oath, the very place where his father Abraham had made an oath with another Abimelech and Phicol, and which Abraham had named Beersheba in chapter 21.
Okay, so the Beersheba means the well of the oath.
Yes,
And what was that about his same place as Abraham?
yes,
That he had made also a covenant with the king. at that
Abimelech. Yes. Verse 35, grief of mind. Esau's choice of wives from among neighboring Hittite women saddened his parents. His action had deliberately ignored the standard set by Abraham for Isaac. And that's it.
Kathy?
Okay. 23 through 25. The assurance. Beersheba was a very special place for Isaac because there his father had entered into a covenant with the Philistine leaders. Beersheba means the well of the oath. The Lord comes to us with his assuring word just when we need encouragement. No matter who is against us, God is with us and for us, and there is no need for us to be afraid. In response to God's gracious word of promise, Isaac built an altar and worshiped the Lord. He was ready to meet his adversaries. Like his father Abraham, Isaac was identified by his tent and altar. Isaac was wealthy enough to be able to build himself a fine house, but his tent identified him as a pilgrim and a stranger in the land. A fugitive is fleeing from home. A vagabond has no home. A stranger is away from home, but a pilgrim is heading home. The tent identified Isaac as a pilgrim, and the altar announced that he worshiped Jehovah and was heading to the heavenly kingdom. Like Isaac, all who have trusted Jesus Christ are strangers in this world and pilgrims heading for a better world. The body we live in is our tent. One day it will be taken down and we'll go to the heavenly city. Life here is brief and temporary because this tent is fragile, but our glorified body will be ours for eternity. But while we're here on earth, let's be sure we build the altar and give our witness that Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world. The agreement, 26 through 33. Isaac's strategy paid off because the Philistine leaders came to him to settle the matter of the property rights. Fortified by God's promises, Isaac was much bolder in his approach, and he confronted the Philistines with their misdeeds. It's worth noting that Isaac's conduct during this conflict had made a great impression on them, and they could tell that the Lord was richly blessing him. More important than possessing his wells was the privilege Isaac had of sharing his witness with his pagan neighbors. Isaac and the elders were able to reach an agreement to seal the treaty. Isaac hosted a feast, for in that culture to eat with others was to forge strong links of friendship and mutual support. That same day, Isaac's servants found one of Abraham's wells and opened it, and Isaac gave it the original name Beersheba, the well of oath, now referred to Isaac's treaty as well as Abraham's. More conflict, verses 34 and 35. Isaac was at peace with his neighbors, but he had war at home. His worldly son Esau had married 2 heathen wives who caused grief to Isaac and Rebekah. It says later, just to provoke his parents, he married a 3rd heathen wife, and that apparently is going to be in chapter 29. In view of Esau's sinful lifestyle, we wonder that Isaac wanted to give him the patriarchal blessing. All of us would like to find our Rehoboth, where we have plenty of room and no contention, but Isaac's Rehoboth was found only after he endured conflict. It's through difficulties that God enlarges us for the larger places he prepares for us. Thou hast enlarged me when I was in distress, Psalm 4:1. When the troubles of our hearts are enlarged and we trust God, then the Lord can enlarge us and bring us into a large place. If we want room, we have to suffer, because that's the only way we can grow and feel at home in the larger place God gives us when we're ready for it. The end.
All right, 26, 23 through 25. As God continued to provide for Isaac, he also reminded him of the promise. I will bless you and multiply your offspring, God told Isaac, adding a new promise. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. God knew fear was a problem for Isaac. So while he confirmed his promise, he also confirmed his presence. In response, Isaac did what we should all do, demonstrating faith by fresh worship. He called on the name of the Lord. 26 through 33. Abimelech recognized that God was with Isaac, so he sought to make a treaty with him. This is a partial fulfillment of the promise to Abraham and Isaac that the Gentiles would share in the blessing of God's people. Abimelech even referred to God as the Lord. Using God's covenant name, he had grown in his understanding of God through his association with Isaac. Just as people today are meant to grow closer to God because of the witness of his people. 34 and 35. Meanwhile, even though God had been blessing Isaac, Esau was making life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah by marrying 2 Hittite, he says it different, spells it differently. He spells it Hethite, women. Rebellion against his parents' wishes further illustrates why Esau was not fit to carry on the covenant. Rather than allowing his father to help him choose an acceptable spouse, he followed his own impulses and took not just 1 wife, but 2 from idolatrous nations around him. The end. Any last minute quick thoughts? Extra notes?
It kind of gets me. Esau is going out of his way, and I guess we'll get more into that, but he's going out of his way just to tick his parents off.
Yeah, that probably was part of his personality early on, even, and probably why Rebecca was willing to try and be deceiving and help Jacob.
Mm-hmm.
And interesting also that he was 40 also when he got married. Like, I thought they married younger. Maybe that was considered the teenage years for them because
Well,
they
it seems like the women tended to be a lot younger than the men, at least from some of them we've read. Like Rebecca was 20 years younger than Isaac.
Hmm. Yeah, I think Sarah was wasn't she like 10 years younger than Abraham? Any other thoughts? If not, I can't believe we did a whole chapter in one day.
I have a write up here on Esau in my Bible, and I like this. Let's see. Do you sometimes feel that the important parts of life escaped you while you were grabbing for something else? This is in regards to Esau. If so, your initial response, like Esau's, may be deep anger. In itself, that isn't wrong as long as you direct the energy of that anger toward a solution. and not toward yourself or others as the cause of the problem. Your greatest need is to find a focal point other than what I need now. The only worthy focal point is God. A relationship with Him will not only give an ultimate purpose to your life, but will also be a daily guideline for living. So he directed his anger toward Jacob and himself after he gave up his birthright.
By his own decision, too.
Yes. That just reminded me of somebody in my family, too. It was just very applicable to people and the way they handle situations today. Some people.
All right. Are we ready for trivia? I know you guys will know this one. In what book do we find the love chapter?
Songs of Solomon.
Corinthians.
1 Corinthians.
First
That's that-
Corinthians.
Oh, that kind of love.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That was a good guess, though, Amber. 13. 1 Corinthians 13.
What did you guess, Amber?
I said Songs of Solomon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought of that first as well.
I tell my kids, we'll read that later.
Yeah.
We'll go through that later.
All right. This concludes the reading of God's word for today. Until tomorrow.
For sure.
Sure.